I spent most of this morning working on the outline for book 6, and I'm feeling a little bit nervous about this one because it feels like I don't have enough. Like, I ended up kind of sketching it out on my iPad instead of writing it down on index cards, just because I didn't have enough index cards to do what I wanted, and I may copy them down on it later, or maybe I'll just kind of put it on a piece of paper so I can sort of fold it up and see like different quarters of the story like on each quadrant of like a folded piece of paper. But yeah, I'm not totally sure like how this is going to come together to be enough of a book. But I have the outline down and I know I can get started. Like the first quarter of it is the most clear, so that's enough for me to get started with writing. And I know I sound pretty terrible. I feel pretty terrible too. It's kind of like, you know, there's that old saying that if you don't make the time to rest, your body will make time for you, and that's definitely been the case for me. I know I said that I've been running nonstop for a couple of weeks, just so busy. And so I got sick. My daughter brought me some delightful school germs, and she was like hardly sick at all, just like maybe a tiny bit sniffly. We honestly had trouble telling because she was off her allergy medicine for a few days to get allergy testing done. But just like the quality of her congestion didn't sound like allergies to me, and I was like, I don't know, baby, are you getting sick? And she said, well, I don't really feel sick, I just feel sniffly. But I am so sick. I've been like running a fever and like coughing and sneezing, and my voice is going, and I just like, my whole body hurts. It's like, why do I get so much sicker than she does? It's not fair. I know it's because kids are like indestructible, but I was looking forward to getting some things done, at least so I would have like a bunch of stuff like off my plate for the rest of November, so that at the end of this month, after we're back from traveling for Thanksgiving, I would be able to sit down and start writing. And I don't know, it might have to wait another week, and I'll be starting at the beginning of December now. I guess that's not the end of the world, but it's not how I planned for things to be. But yeah, I think I'm gonna ruminate on my outline for a day or two, see if my fever brain cooks up anything else to put on here, and then before too long I'm gonna be getting started. So now I've been sitting on my story outline for a couple of days, and I'm glad that I always give it, you know, a little bit more time to cook before I sit down to start writing, because there were a few little things that I had missed that didn't cross my mind until I was doing other things, like doing some of the character artwork that I'm doing. Like I'm drawing some little chibi characters to go with the last book. And as I was drawing them, I thought of some things relating to the artifacts that I needed to work into this last piece of the story. And then there was something last night that I thought of that I hadn't addressed yet that really I think will strengthen the story as I go forward. I don't have my index cards still. I haven't gone out to buy them. It's getting to be the holidays, and I don't really want to deal with trying to go to stores during Christmas. And then with some impending travel, I also didn't want to be placing Amazon orders. I'm worried enough about my books getting here in time for Tuesday's release. It's hard to believe that I'm already to the part where book 5 will be coming out on Tuesday. I kind of don't feel ready, but there's not too much else that I can do. You know, everything is set. This is when it goes out, so it's just going to be kind of a quiet release. But I have my outlines, and like the first quarter is like a whole page here, and all of these little bullet points are things that I would normally put on my index cards. So I got my markers. These are just like fine tip Crayola markers, and I'm going to go through and kind of color code each section, like what character POV I want it to be in, and also figuring out like whose arc is moving forward most in these different sections. And there are some things I don't have worked out yet, but I always like to leave a few things kind of up in the air. Sometimes there are places in my outline where it's just like, you know, this needs to be a transition to move from this point to the next point, and I don't really know how they're going to get there yet, but that gives me the kind of flexibility that I need to adapt as I go along. I planted my pothos cuttings today since I was able to go out and get some potting soil, and I was kind of thinking through my story while I was standing outside putting them into the new flower pot. And about half of what I planted had, you know, like really long, strong roots, and I don't have any worries about those plants. Some of them only had like little tiny spindly roots, and a couple of them didn't grow roots at all, and I still have those in a jar of water on my windowsill. But as I was planting them, I was kind of thinking that, you know, on like a grand scale, a lot of books are like that too. Some of them, they take root easily and they take off and they grow, and it's just something amazing. And then you have some story cuttings, as it were, that you put them in water and you hope that they'll grow, and no matter what you do, nothing seems to make a difference, and they just sit there. It's not that you did anything wrong or that something could have been done differently, it's just that some things don't grow as well as they should. And I think you get that even like on a smaller scale within a book. You know, there are going to be scenes in this outline that don't take root and grow the way that I want, and they're going to end up being like the rootless cuttings in a jar. But life is a mix of those things, and books will be a mix of those things too. And even though the chapters may not be remarkable, if they are at least useful or even just fun, I think they still serve a purpose. So going through all of this and using all of my markers to determine, you know, what I would be moving forward at each point in the story kind of helped me cement where I'm going to be starting, because I wasn't really sure if I should begin the story like exactly where I left off at the end of book 5, because I knew that it would be kind of like a high tension, high emotion moment, but there's kind of a lull immediately after that, and I wasn't totally sure how I would fill that in. But as I'm going through and making notes, I feel like it's kind of important to have that time to sort of build. It's okay to have some slow moments, even early on, especially, you know, 6 books into a series. I think I've earned a little bit of leeway to have a slow moment before the big climb to the climax, because once things start moving in this book, there's never going to be much of a slowdown. Through all of my outline, I've only got maybe like 2 or 3 points after the beginning where the crew has any downtime whatsoever. And all of those are like preparation and staging points for the next point of battle. So it's still going to be really tense. So even though there's not like really high stakes in that particular scene, it's going to be carrying a lot of tension moving forward, because it's the characters getting ready for, you know, the next horrible thing that they know is going to happen. So I think starting with a highly emotional scene and then moving into something that's really high tension is probably a perfectly good way to start this book. And even if I just kind of like zoom out for a little bit and skip forward a little in the next chapter or so, after the first 2 maybe, I think that'll be fine, and it'll let me catch that high emotion point coming off of the end of book 5. So that means I have my starting point nailed down. There's still some other decisions for me to make, like I haven't decided yet if I'm going to have more than 2 POV characters. Usually when I'm deciding the POVs, it's been, you know, Zaid as the main character plus one other. Lark has an equal role of importance to Zaid, but because of some of the secrets that she was carrying, she never had a POV chapter until we were all the way into book 4. So book 4 and book 5 were split between Zaid and Lark. Book 1 was just Zaid, book 2 was Zaid and Tula, and book 3 was Zaid and Andrian. So at this point, there have been 4 POV characters. I'm not sure if I gain anything from giving all of them a POV again in this book, but maybe I should, and I'm considering giving Ricia some POV chapters as well, because she did not have a POV in book 1 because of how much time she spent separated from the rest of the group. But I think giving her even just a chapter or 2 in this book might be good for, you know, wrapping up her role, because, you know, there's like the 5 major important characters here now. Everybody's gotten a POV except Ricia, at least at some point in the series. But I feel like if I'm going to be tying up loose ends for each of the major characters' arcs, like, you know, this is really bringing everything to a conclusion for everybody. This is setting up the way things are going to be for the rest of their life. And not all of the characters are going to be happy with the way things end. But I don't think I need to decide that yet. I already know for sure that Zaid and Lark are going to be like the main POV characters. But if I decide to give anybody else POV chapters, that's not really going to come in or even need to be addressed until a big moment in Andrian's story that happens toward the end of the first quarter. So I think I'm gonna just sit on the outline for a few more days before I start writing. We're halfway through November, but I have a few things that I need to finish up, like some commission work that I need to wrap up. And then Thanksgiving break starts and we're going to be traveling, so I think if I can start writing next week instead of this week, that's going to be probably the best decision for how to budget my time here. And that way I'm not going to be like getting super deep into the writing groove and then immediately break it up with having to travel and my daughter being out of school. And I'll just kind of figure that if I get started on any of this, then that's great, that's a win, but I'm not going to really dig in until the end of the month when she's back in school. These things feel like really big decisions now. I know in the long run they're not going to be that big of a deal. But it's nice to be able to sit and kind of talk through the thinking process, because having this time to think and sort through my ideas and make a solid plan of how I want to progress is a really important part of writing, at least for me. And then by the time this goes up, it's going to be Tuesday the 19th, and Paragon of Shadow will be out in the world. It's pretty crazy to sit here and think that I've come this far, especially since almost all of my fantasy books have gone out in the last 4 years. I just feel very, you know, like my shirt here. It's thankful, grateful, and blessed. I'm very much feeling it, especially since I'm coming up on like 400 subscribers now on this channel, which is crazy considering I just started posting stuff here so that I would have things to show my local writing group and my online writing friends, you know, this is how I do things and this is what I'm working on right now. And it just kind of resonated with a lot more people than I expected, I guess. So yeah, very grateful, very thankful for all of you who have decided to watch me kind of flail around and figure out my way through publishing all these books. Wrapping up this series is going to be kind of ushering in a new era and a new direction for me, so it's going to be interesting to see, and I am glad that I am not going to be taking those steps alone. So thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next time. I'm going to be sharing some of my holiday book crafts while I get through this season of Thanksgiving break and get ready to dive into the actual writing for this series. But I look forward to seeing you then. Take care, and I'll see you next time.